The causes of uprising. Reasons. The revolt was caused by the cumulative effect of discontent that was brewing up in the minds of the people. The different reasons responsible for the revolt of 1857 can be described under the following heads. Political causes. The indiscriminate annexation of Indian states through subsidiary alliance and doctrine of lapse created mistrust, suspicion, and fear among the princes. The Mughals felt humbled as Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar was informed that his successors would not be regarded as king and would have to abandon their historic home at Red Fort. The annexation of Awadh on the plea of maladministration created panic as Nawab of Awadh had been the most loyal and submissive ruler of his time. Hindus were enraged as Nana Sahib was denied his pension and forced to live in Kanpur away from his home state. The annexation of Indian states resulted in large-scale unemployment as its ministers, courtiers, officers and soldiers lost their jobs and found no avenues for re-employment under the new dispensation. Socio-religious reasons. People felt threatened by the activities of Christian missionaries who tried to convert people and made public attacks on Hinduism and Islam. The government seemed to be supporting them well. The interference of the British in the age-old customs of sati, polygamy, child marriage, etc. antagonized the orthodox section of the society. Legislations against sati, support for widow remarriage, and other measures were looked upon as interference in the lives of the people. The introduction of English education, encouraging women's education, introduction of railway and telegraph were viewed with suspicion that British wanted to use these for spreading Christianity. Lands belonging to temples and mosques were taxed, which not only hurt the religious sentiments but also deprived the families dependent on these lands for their income. Economic causes. The peasants were opposed by the new land revenue system that made excessive demands on them. They were dispossessed of their land in case of failure of payment. Due to high duties imposed on cotton and silk, the producers stopped the manufacture of these goods. Many craftsmen and artisans lost the royal patronage after the annexation of princely states and became impoverished. The ruination of handicraft industry led to too much pressure on land. The high posts in civil services, army, and the judiciary were reserved for the British, and even the educated Indians were not given these high posts nor given handsome salaries. Military causes. Indian sepoys were forbidden to wear caste and sectarian marks such as tilak or beard or turban. The General Service Enlistment Act in 1856 required every Indian soldier to serve overseas. Many sepoys believed that overseas travel would lead to loss of caste. The sepoys were often humiliated by their British seniors. The Indian soldier was paid less and could not rise above the rank of Subedar. His foreign service allowance was discontinued just before the revolt, causing a cut in salary. The inequality in the sanction of rations, pay structure, and living conditions between the British and the Indian soldiers in the barracks caused a lot of dissatisfaction. Fact. Dalhousie's Doctrine of Lapse stated that the kingdom of an Indian ruler who is not survived by a natural male heir will pass on under British control. Immediate causes. In 1856, the army introduced a new rifle, the Enfield rifle, which had a greased paper wrapped around the cartridge. The sepoy had to bite off the paper to load it into the rifle. The rumor that the new cartridge were greased with the fat of cows and pigs created an offensive feeling among the Hindus and Muslims. Hindus worshipped cows and Muslims detested pigs. They refused to use new rifles as this hurt the religious sentiments of both the communities. Many historians also believe in this story and feel it was a deliberate move to hurt Indian sentiments. Some historians believe, however, that these were only rumors. By the time the British woke up to the damage done by it was too late. Fact: the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 was not only a revolt of soldiers, but it represented Indians' anger against British injustice and cruelty. The revolt was a statement of masses' desire to be independent of British rule. Leaders and spread of the uprising. The first stirring of the revolt was marked by the Barakpur in Bengal in March 1857, where Mangal Pandey, an Indian sepoy, openly shot down the British officer of the regiment. He was executed for this act and the regiment was disbanded. The incident caused an open mutiny at Barakpur in Bengal and spread to other places. Many Indians were convicted and sentenced to long periods of imprisonment on refusal to use greased cartridges. Then, in May 1857, the actual revolt broke out at Meerut. Some Indian soldiers were taken into custody for refusing to use greased cartridges. Angered by this, other soldiers killed British officers, burnt down their houses, and released the prisoners. The British soldiers stationed there could not resist them. From Meerut, the Indian soldiers marched to Delhi, where they were joined by the Delhi soldiers. They proclaimed the restoration of Mughal rule and placed Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar on the throne. Once the news about Delhi uprising reached other parts of northern India, the soldiers of these areas also revolted against the British. They rose up in arms against, in central India, Kanpur, Lucknow, Rohilkhand, Banaras, and parts of Bihar. Delhi. It was the morning of 11th May when the sepoys of Meerut crossed Yamuna and marched to the Red Fort. Bahadur Shah Zafar had suddenly become the rallying point for all those who had desired to put an end to the British rule. The rebels killed many British officers and captured the city. The revolt was actually led by General Bakht Khan. However, the troops under Bakht Khan held on for 4 months before the British crushed the rebellion. Delhi was taken after fierce fighting, and Bahadur Shah and his 2 sons were captured and taken prisoners. He was exiled to Rangoon and his 2 sons were shot dead. Awadh. The revolt was led by brave and resourceful Begum Hasrat Mahal with the support of sepoys, peasants, chiefs and talukdars. The British forces were forced to take shelter in the residency building. The siege continued for 8 long months. British fought the battle under Henry Lawrence. Though many British soldiers, women and children died every day inside the residency from wounds and epidemic, still they held on. Henry Lawrence himself died in this battle. Despite great courage and determination showed by Indian troops, British were able to release besieged troops and Lucknow was reoccupied by British in March 1858. Kanpur. The revolt was led by Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa, who captured Kanpur and declared himself the Peshwa. He was assisted by Tantia Tope, who was constantly urging everyone to come together. He held on to Kanpur for quite some time. The British fought back with vengeance and Indians were blown to pieces by cannons. Nana Sahib escaped to Nepal. Jhansi. One of the greatest leaders of the revolt was Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi. When she found that victory against British was not possible, she fled with the rebels to join Tantia Tope at Kalpi. Together, they put up a good fight. She died fighting the British troops on 17 June 1858. The commander of the British army referred to her as the best and bravest military leader of the rebels. Tantia Tope carried on guerrilla warfare for some time before he was hanged to death after trial. Bihar. The major organizer of the revolt in Bihar was an old man, Kunwar Singh. He mobilized the forces there and defeated British at many places. Later, he joined forces with Nana Sahib and died bravely fighting with energy. Suppression of the uprising. The strategy of the British from the beginning was to limit the revolt. The Nizam of Hyderabad, the Begum of Bhopal, and the King of Nepal came forward to help the British. Delhi was soon recovered under the leadership of General Nicholson, Rani Lakshmibai, Tantia Tope, Kunwar Singh, Bakht Khan all died in the battlefield, while Nana Sahib and Begum Hasrat Mahal escaped to Nepal. By the end of 1859, the British restored their rule and order. For them, it was as good as reconquest of India. Causes of the failure of uprising. Though the revolutionaries fought heroically, they did not have a unified command and were unable to organize a united front. The whole of India did not join the uprising. Large parts of western and southern India remain unaffected. Lack of modern weapons and equipment was also a factor for the failure. The British Army was well equipped and trained. Poor organization and lack of coordination also contributed to their defeat. The long period of misrule by East India Company came to an end and the administration was taken over by the British Crown. Queen Victoria was proclaimed the Empress of India. The Board of Control and Board of Directors were replaced by the Secretary of State for Indian Affairs. The rule of the Mughals and Peshwas came to an end. The Governor-General was given the title of Viceroy and was subordinated to the Secretary of State. The Queen's Proclamation of 1858 assured Indian princes that there would be no more annexation of territories. The rights of adoption were also accepted. According to this proclamation, more educated Indians got the chance to associate themselves with the administration of the country. The need of cooperation with the Indians was fully realized. The army was recognized to prevent further revolts. The proclamation also granted general pardon to all except those found guilty of murdering the British. The mighty uprising of 1857 was the first great and direct threat to British rule in India, which shook the very foundation of British Empire. The nature of uprising. The coming together of soldiers of different regions and rulers of different principalities and participation of different sections of society for the common aim of overthrowing the British rule was unprecedented in Indian history. It possessed a national philosophy and represented a national outlook in context of those days. In principle, it represented a desire for the freedom in whatever form. After the suppression of the revolt of 1857, armed rising against the British continued. It broke out in different parts of the country. The Wahhabi movement, the Kuka movement, and tribal revolts broke out, but all of them were ultimately crushed. These movements represented the demands not only of a section, community, or region, but the entire nation, and it united the Indians into one entity as nothing else had done before. The revolt of 1857 was one of the major landmarks in the history of India. The heroic struggle served as a constant source of inspiration. India's perception of themselves and their country was to change the history of India forever.